Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Spin Cycle Live. I'm your host, Nathan Hale. Today, we have got yet another show for you all. You know I couldn't miss a day. I've got to come. I have to be here and report the news for you. Because where else are you going to get it from? Where else is it going to come from? There's not any other people on the entire internet that do anything like this show right here. I'm the only one. Today is Monday, July 21st, 2025. Can you believe we're almost done with July? Isn't that crazy? Next month is August. I can tell next month is August because it's getting hot outside. Getting hot, 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 hot and humid here in the Midwest. If you're in the Midwest, you know exactly what's going on right now. It's hot, it's humid. It's not a good time. It's a gloomy day out here in the Midwest. It's been raining all day. Just looks sad outside. Perfect day to go and see a movie, in my opinion. But we have so many stories to cover, so much to talk about. And if you're not already following me on all the social media platforms, you better be. X, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Rumble. I'm at HomoNatian on those platforms. You follow the show at Spin Cycle Live. With all that out of the way, guess let's get right into our very first story of the week. This comes from the Financial Post. More Americans shift money from checking and savings to accounts with investment income, study says. New research finds that more Americans are shifting their money from checking and savings accounts into financial vehicles that pay an investment income, a trend that helps to explain the resilience of the U.S. economy after a bout of high inflation and recent uncertainty due to tariffs. The analysis by JP Morgan Chase Institute examined the accounts of 4.7 million households and found that people's total cash reserves are increasing when including new amounts going into brokerage accounts, money market funds, and certificates of deposit to assess people's well-being. Inflation-adjusted cash balances in checking and savings accounts, quote, remain low with a flat growth trajectory. But since the middle of 2024, total cash reserves have been increasing and approaching historical growth trends once the additional accounts are included, the analysis said. Families across many income bands are now seeing a turnaround in their total cash, said Chris Wheat, president of the Institute. Wheat said it had been, quote, hard to square the circle of consumer spending staying strong despite the lack of growth in checking and savings accounts, an issue that can now be explained by people in a higher interest rate environment shifting more money into accounts that yield investment returns. He said people appear to be using the other accounts to manage their cash rather than simply making long-term investments. We caution, however, that the trend might be short-term and that the Institute doesn't have a basis yet as to whether it will continue. The analysis also found that households with incomes generally lower than $35,000 had their total cash balances increase at an annual rate of 5 to 6%. The lowest income quintile trend to have checking and savings account balances of just over $1,000, while the median balances of the highest income quintile are over $8,000. So I think this is great. I think that we're living in a time right now where more Americans have access to financial literacy than like ever before in the entire history of the United States, right? We have so many people who are online now who are making YouTube videos, for example, that are all about how to manage your money more effectively and how to do some really basic, simple things to grow your wealth, right? I mean, we as conservatives love to say that if you can do just a few things throughout your life, you will not be permanently poor in the United States. In fact, if you just go a little bit above and beyond those things, you in fact can grow your wealth substantially, even if you make next to no money. It's not that difficult, right? We always say, hey, if you can graduate high school, if you can wait to get married before you have babies, and you can hold a job, you will not be permanently poor in the United States, right? It won't happen for you. Of course, there's the outliers, but for the vast majority of people, it won't happen for them. And some of those really basic things that you can do is diversifying your portfolio. So many people, especially lower income earners, they're either living to paycheck paycheck because they're living beyond their means, or they just don't have, the wherewithal to diversify where their money is going, right? Open up a Roth IRA when you're young. Put very little money in it per month. You will have a huge return by the time you retire. The more you put into it, the greater the return will be. Open up a brokerage account and just start putting some money into the S&P 500, the Dow Jones Index, all of just the general index funds, right? You will have a return over time. It might not be immediate, but if you put a little bit of money here and there into it, it'll grow. And I think so many people either don't want to do that because they don't want to take the time to do it, even though it takes next to no time to do it, right? Like I have an investment fund. I put money into it every now and then. I just ignore it, right? I put in index funds. It just sits there. It just does its thing, right? I'm not like a big stock trader like that. Day trading does not yield the returns that people would like to think it does. So that's not really my thing. But I think this article speaks to a greater growing consensus in the United States is that, hey, you know, wages are not following inflation. I am not getting paid more in relationship to how much I'm spending. So I need to find ways to make more money. And one of those ways is diversifying my portfolio and getting that money that's sitting in my savings account that's making no return for me. It's just sitting there gathering dust and throwing it into another account that actually will be bringing me back interest on those investments. So I think it's interesting. So good for all these people who have done it. More people should be doing it. That's all I gotta say about that. Move on. So another article from the Financial Post. Court rules Mississippi's social media age verification law can go into effect. A Mississippi law that requires social media users to verify their ages can go into effect, a federal court has ruled. A tech industry group has pledged to continue challenging the law, arguing it infringes on users' rights to privacy and free expression. A three-judge panel of the Fifth Circuit Court, U.S. Court of Appeals, overruled a decision by a federal district judge to block the 2024 law from going into effect. It's the latest legal development as court challenges play out against similar laws in states across the country. Parents and even some teens themselves are growing increasingly concerned about the effects of social media use on young people. Supporters of the new laws have said they are needing to help curb the explosive use of social media among young people and what researchers say is an associated increase in depression and anxiety. Mississippi Attorney General Lynn Fitch argued in a court filing defending the law that steps such as age verification for digital sites could mitigate harm caused by sex trafficking, sexual abuse, child pornography, targeted harassment, sextortion, incitement to suicidal and self-harm, and other harmful or often illegal conduct against children. That's for sure. Attorneys for NetChoice, of course, which brought the lawsuit, have pledged to continue their court challenge, arguing the law threatens privacy rights and unconstitutionally restricts free expression of users of all ages. The industry group, which has filed similar lawsuits in Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Ohio, and Utah, represents some of the country's most high-profile technology companies, including Google, which owns YouTube, Snap, the parent company of Snapchat, and Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram. So, first off, I've covered this a lot. I think that this legislation is really interesting. I think that we need it in all 50 states. In my opinion, there's no reason why we shouldn't be we shouldn't have age verification across platforms like this. At least, I mean, I think 18 might be a little bit high. I think that 16 is a perfectly fine age. That's your last couple years of high school. getting in the social media space, but it's 100% true that we have seen the rise in social media use leading towards more instances of self-harm, particularly amongst girls, more high increased levels of depression, anxiety amongst young people as a whole. Now, of course, right now, that's a correlation, not a causation, but pretty convenient, right? It doesn't take a rocket scientist to make the connection between a rise in social media and a rise in depression, anxiety, right? It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. So I think that it's perfectly reasonable for states to be like, hey, no social media until you're 16, no social media until you're 15. If they want to go to 18, that's fine. I don't live in Mississippi, so I don't really care what they do with their state laws all that much. If they want to do 18, that's fine. I think that they did. Is that what they're doing? 18. Maybe it didn't say. I don't know what it said. Well, if you were listening more carefully than I was, apparently, you would know if it's said or not. But if they want to do an older age, that's fine. I think the important thing to note here is that we're talking about children here. We're not talking about saying, hey, you can't use social media until you're 21. Right? In America, you're an adult when you reach 18, regardless of what you might think about that. Right? We give you more rights when you're 18. That's just fact of the matter. So I don't think there's anything unconstitutional about saying, hey, you have to wait until this age, pre 18 years old, to use social media, to get on to pornography sites, to access age restricted material, or just like I said, social media as a whole. I have no issue with that whatsoever. The opposition would love to say that this is somehow infringing on the free speech rights of minors in the United States. Minors don't have free speech rights in this country. They don't, right? If your parent, you have the right to say, hey, kid, give me your phone. You don't have freedom of expression within your household. What your parent says goes at the end of the day, right? They want to be nice and listen to you and listen to your opinion. That's all fine and dandy. But you don't have free speech rights until you're 18. Now, as far as, the government saying controlling what kids can and cannot say, I see where they're coming from, but I would hardly say that this is government controlling what children can say on social media by restricting their usage of it. I hardly would say that minors in the United States right now have anything good to say on social media at this time. They're very few and far between in the grand scheme of children using social media. So I don't know. If we lived in a different time when American kids were doing great, like double thumbs up great, I'd have more of an issue with it, but they're not doing great. Something very critical is happening to kids right now, and we need to do something about it. I think this is great. More of this, and to the complaints of the opposition that, oh my gosh, how are we possibly going to execute this? There are so many age verification services out there right now that already exist that could easily be implemented into these platforms, right? Send us a photograph of your ID. That's all we want, right? Like I said, I have Spotify Premium for students. They made me send them a picture of my student ID to confirm I was a student. Simple as that. Was not that hard. That's all I gotta say about that. All right. Move on to our next story. So this is from the Stratus Times. So Musk's ex calls French foreign interference probe politically motivated. So I saw this. I was like, what is going on in France right now? So let's look at this. So a French probe into alleged foreign interference and bias via the algorithm at Elon Musk-owned social media X is politically motivated, the company said in a post on July 21st, adding that it was refusing to cooperate. Quote, X believes that this investigation is distorting French law in order to serve a political agenda and ultimately restrict free speech, the social media platform said. It added that it, quote, has not acceded to the French authorities' demands to access its recommended algorithm and real-time data, quote, as we have a legal right to do. Cybercrime prosecutors announced the opening of the probe on July 11th into these suspected crimes include manipulating and extracting data from automated systems, quote, as part of a criminal gang. Wow, strong words. The move followed two complaints received in January about foreign interference in French politics via X. One of them from Mr. Eric Rotherl, an MP from President Emmanuel Macron's centrist party. Mr. Brothel had complained of, quote, reduced diversity of voices and opinions, and Mr. Musk's personal interventions on the network since his 2022 takeover of the former Twitter. The Tesla and SpaceX chief has raised heckles in Europe with political allies, including vocal backing for the far-right Alternative for Germany party ahead of February legislative elections. The Alternative for Germany party is hardly a far-right party. Quote, democracy is too fragile to let digital platform owners tell us what we think, who to vote for, and even who to hate, Mr. Brothel said after the investigation was announced. The company responded on July 21st saying Mr. Brothel has accused X of manipulating its algorithm for foreign interference purposes, an allegation which is completely false. Prosecutors have not confirmed whether they are also investigating under a French law against foreign interference in politics passed in 2024. X also complained of bias in French authorities' choice of experts to examine its algorithm, including mathematician David Calaveras and computer scientist Marzia Panitha. Both have been involved in a scheme called HelloQuityX, designed to make it easier for users to migrate their X presence to other social networks. Picking them, quote, raises serious concerns about the impartiality, fairness, and political motivations of the investigation, the company said. It also objected to the use of organized gang aggravating circumstances. The characterization, quote, is usually reserved for drug cartels or mafia groups and enables the French police to deploy extensive investigation powers, including wiretapping the personal devices of ex-employees, the company said. Yeah, I would hardly call what Elon Musk is up to right now an organized gang. Strong words from the French. So, what's actually happening here? Well, in my opinion, I think that it's absolutely what Elon's saying, and that this is absolutely a politically motivated attack. This is French politicians being upset that a social media platform saying that they promote free speech actually promotes free speech. Crazy, right? Crazy, I know. Absolutely insane. And I think that what they're seeing is a whole bunch of people having opposition towards French politicians right now. I think that the same thing is happening in Canada, where there's a lot of Canadians who have a lot of opposition against Canadian politicians right now and what they're doing in government. It's the same thing that was happening on social media back when Trump was running in 2016 and 2020, where the government tried to manipulate social media platforms to push down and discredit posts from Trump supporters or just simply conservatives for that matter, against saying negative things against the Biden administration, right? It's all just to cover up the wrongdoings of what they're doing. So instead of politicians actually going out and serving the people that they supposedly represent and actually making their country a better place, they would rather silence voices who are trying to tell them to go and do their job as opposed to actually going and doing their job, right? That, I think, is exactly what's happening here. Now, if X is specifically, pushing down, the opinions of left-wing politicians in France, as opposed disproportionately to right-wing politicians in France, that I think is an issue, right? That's not really free speech anymore. That's not really fair. But I don't think that's the case. That's what's happening, right? Even right now, the American version of X, which I'm used fairly frequently, you're probably watching the show on it right now, is filled with a whole bunch of different whack job leftists who say whatever the heck they want about whatever the heck's happening at the time, it still somehow shows up in my feed, right? I don't know how it makes its way in there. It still gets millions of views. It's still got a whole bunch of people supporting it, right? I don't agree with it, but it's certainly not being pushed down the algorithm. I see it probably just as much as I see whack job conservative posts coming out. Um, so I don't know. I suspect that this is in fact totally politically motivated. I don't think that there's anything legit happening here. But if I see an update, I'll be sure to update you on it. If I find out that I'm wrong, I'll be sure to tell you about it. So if you hear anything about this in the future, let me know. So, but I think this is a total attack on just Elon's platform as a whole. But let's move on. All right. So we got a story coming from the New York Post. So Harvard University back in court Monday to battle Trump administration's $2.6 billion, that's billion with a B, funding cuts. We've talked a lot about Harvard on this channel in the past couple months. They're back in the news again. It's really interesting. This is a big story, in my opinion. So more people should be educated on it. Harvard University is set to argue in federal court Monday that the Trump administration illegally stripped its $2.6 billion as the wealthy Ivy League school funding battle rages on. U.S. District Judge Allison Burroughs is due to hear oral arguments from lawyers from both Harvard and the Justice Department after the nation's oldest and wealthiest university sued the Trump administration for slashing its flow of federal funds and grants. If the judge decides in Harvard's favor, the ruling would reverse the spat of funding freezes and cuts inflicted by the Trump administration after Harvard refused in part to implement reforms to combat anti-Semitism and address other concerns on campus. So there's been a huge argument that the media has made that, oh, poor Harvard, poor Harvard. This billions of dollars of funding is going to mean that they're going to have to close down. They're going to have to start cutting programs. Oh my gosh, poor Harvard. As if they don't have a multi-billion dollar fund that they pull. They have a huge endowment that they pull from every year, right? And they pull very little from it actually every year. Harvard can more than afford to self-fund themselves as a private university if they wanted to. But if you're a business, wouldn't you rather get $2.6 billion of revenue from the government and not from your own money, right? I'd rather use someone else's money and spend it than my own. Just saying. So I just think it's so laughable that we're looking at Harvard and being like, oh, they're being attacked by the Trump administration. This is so terrible. The Trump administration is trying to crack down universities. No, they're not. The Trump administration is trying to get this immigration game under control and figure out who's actually here. One of the big things that was not talked about, or maybe was talked about later on, I didn't read this article, was that they want these universities to hand over the information they have on their international students, right? We want to know who these people are. We don't know who they are. We want to know where they came from, what they're doing, why they should be here. Why should we let them stay in our country and use our resources, right? There's universities all over the world. Why do these people deserve to be in ours of all the different ones, right? And that was something that Harvard didn't want to do. It was the anti-Semitism thing was another thing too. And people don't want to take the anti-Semitism case at Harvard very seriously, I feel like. There are people at Harvard literally calling for the deaths of Jewish students on their campus. That's not something to take lightly. This wasn't like, oh, we're just pro-Palestinian, we need to give the Palestinian people refugee status here. We need to stop this war in Gaza. No, it was literally like, Jewish students are bad. They need to be eliminated from our campus, right? There was harassment that was happening. It was like a big thing. This was actually bad. It was happening. This was not just a little cute free speech protest. This was actually inciting hatred on the campus. That's totally wrong. So I hope the Trump administration wins. I truly do. I hate the university system right now, and I'm someone who's in it. I hope that the university system kind of crumbles apart a little bit. It needs to have kind of a couple gut punches to get its act back in order. The universities used to be this beacon of knowledge and new ideas and freedom of expression and talking about things that weren't being talked about in other places. And now they've just turned into woke echo chambers that if you have any sort of differing opinion, just totally gets smashed unless you're a part of an institute at a university that specifically champions free speech and differing opinions. And those are few and far between, let me tell you. That's all I gotta say about that. All right, let's go and move on to our last story. We'll get this show wrapped up. Nice, quick 30-minute show for you to start the week off right. This comes from The Federalist. Quote, "We need them badly. Trump pushes John Thune to confirm his executive nominees." Can you believe that all the Trump nominees have not been approved yet by the Senate? Isn't that crazy? We're like 7 months in. President Donald Trump is calling on Senate Majority Leader John Thune to confirm his executive nominees awaiting confirmation by the upper chamber. Quote, "Hopefully the very talented John Thune, fresh off our many victories over the past 2 weeks and indeed 6 months, will cancel August recess and long weekends in order to get my incredible nominees confirmed," the president wrote in a Saturday Truth Social post. Quote, "We need them badly." Trump's push for Thune to quickly get his appointees confirmed came days after the Federalist reported that there are more than 120 of the president's nominees awaiting action by the Senate. This includes notable appointees such as Matthew Lautemeyer to the Undersecretary of the Air Force and Joe Kent to be Director of National Counterterrorism Center. Despite promising voters shortly after Trump's January inauguration that Senate Republicans would, quote, "work nights, weekends, and recesses to confirm the president's nominees," Thune has moved as slow as molasses on fulfilling such a pledge. In fact, the South Dakota Republican and Senate GOP leadership have regularly dismissed the Senate for long weekends, allowing confirmation of Trump's nominees to languish in the upper chamber for months on end. Terrible. I think this speaks to a bigger issue. No matter who our politicians are, they're all out for themselves, right? They want to have their long weeks. They don't really care about what's happening in the Trump administration all that much, right? They'll go along for as long as it's expedient. Hopefully now there's a little bit more media pressure on them. They'll do the right thing. But I was under the impression that all the Trump nominees had been confirmed months ago. I had no idea there were still 120 of them waiting to get confirmed by the Senate. That's a lot. That's a lot of people. And these are critical roles too. I think so many of us forget how the gears of government roll together. There's, the secretary, there's undersecretaries, there are other appointees that have critical roles within government, and they have a key job to play at whatever it is they're doing, what they're up to at the time. I mean, this is kind of a big deal. So, yeah, I mean, John Thune, get on this. We need these people in our government, right? This could be a reason why some of the things that Trump has promised really haven't gotten off, because we're waiting on these people to actually go and do those things, right? There's only so much that the actual head of departments can do. They need to have their assistants, undersecretaries to roll out certain key programs. But that's all I gotta say about that. I could nerd out on how the federal government is structured all day long. It's really interesting to me. But with that, that's all I gotta say today. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Spin Cycle Live. We'll be back here on Wednesday with yet another episode for you all. And yeah, tweet at me on X. Let me know what you thought of the show. Make sure you share this show with friends. Let people know this is the best show on the internet to get all of your news from. We got the best opinions in it. I always try to bring you stories that other places aren't showing off as much. And I think this is one of them. I'm not sure how many people are going to cover the fact that Trump's nominees still haven't been appointed yet. So we'll see how all that plays out. We'll let you know if there's an update to that. But with that, make sure you're following on all the social media platforms. Give us a like, give us a subscribe, share us with friends. Let people know how great the show is. We'll see you back here on Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time with another episode of Spin Cycle Live. With that, I have been Nathan Hale. This has been Spin Cycle Live. Peace out. Bye.